So I wanted to make this video to explain my story as a TI, how I became a TI, why I think I'm a TI. I noticed people were following me about 7 months ago. Everywhere I went, every business, whatever. You know how it is. At first I thought it was feds because I was involved with some drug stuff, and I just assumed it was DEA or a narcotic enforcement team, something like that. So I went with that. Well, months went by and nothing happened. I wasn't arrested. So I thought it was kind of weird that I was still being followed. I brought it up to my girlfriend at the time. She noticed people were following me. So I said, fuck this. I'm not putting you through this. I'm going to move away. Hopefully the heat will die down. So I drove from Detroit all the way to Portland. They followed me all the way there. They infiltrated my life in Portland. Gang-stalked the fuck out of me. I moved back to Michigan, and all my bridges were burned. For no reason, seemingly. I have done a lot of bad things in my life due to drug use and stuff like that, but these were like my best friends, that just didn't want shit to do with me anymore for no reason, though. And I spent some time with them, and they were signaling to each other and to other people on the road, and I just knew that they were involved too. So it was this ultimate betrayal. And then I had to write it down because, as you know, this is chaotic. It fucks with your memory because there's so much trauma, and you can't really make what's what. You know what I'm saying? So I sat down and I wrote, this is what I call my D-Day as a TI. I think a lot of us have a D-Day where it was just harassment, betrayal after betrayal, and this day was designed to make you basically act out or kill yourself. So I said, coming out of Denver into Castle Rock, Colorado was a hellish experience at best. I was essentially forced off the freeway, and the cowards that vehicular mobbed me forced me to crash into a snowbank. This happened in front of bystanders, fellow vehicles, during a blizzard, also in front of a cop. Everybody on the road that saw it happen were laughing at me as I screamed for help. I called 911, and they informed me that since I had no license plate numbers, they would not be able to send an officer out to take my report. Interestingly enough, a cop ahead in the road had its flashers on and was parked on the side of the highway. I pulled up right next to it and tried to get his attention and get him to roll his window down. I mouthed the words, "help," and he just acted as if he couldn't hear me with a smirk on his fucking face. I don't ever call the police when I have problems. I usually have handled my own shit just because that's the type of lifestyle I lived before. I really wanted to bang on his window, but obviously I didn't because he's a cop. I was fearful for my life. My car was damaged. Semi-trucks blared past me and tried to run me off the road and hit me, so I pull into the Colorado Springs Shell gas station, deciding to wait out the storm. One lonesome police officer was standing outside during this blizzard, mind you. I say hello to him. He nods sternly, and as I exit the gas station, he says, "Good luck to you." Just like that, with a creepy, strange smile. I decide to go because, again, I am fearful for my life. My car's damaged. Again, my little Honda sedan maneuvers gracefully across the interstate into the closest gas station. So now my front end is totally fucked and smashed because of the cars that ran me off the road. I sit at this gas station and FaceTime my friend. I'm in a total shock and PTSD mode at this point. I break down on the phone and tell my friend Alex about what happened. She sat and talked to me all night. So she suggested that the freeway was still too risky to drive on due to the gang stalkers that were trying to make a crash and stage an accident due to the road conditions. I should call a tow truck. The logic behind this was that they couldn't ram me if I was inside a huge lifted tow truck and my car was on it. Needless to say, homeboy takes 2 hours to show up. He says he will tow me to the nearest stop that he trusts. I say okay. I didn't have anybody else to trust at that point. He ends up driving me to some dude's house with a converted garage, like one of those Craigslist shops. Creepy ass looking dude, like Hills Have Eyes looking motherfucker. He looked like the hills have eyes, is what I wrote. The whole time I felt uneasy. I had a horrible vibe, and I had to drive my car as is out of Colorado. I pull onto the interstate, and I see this random black dude who looks distressed on the side of the freeway. His car was rolled in the ditch nearby. I thought I would try to help him. Even in the midst of all this, I pulled off to the next exit and turned around. I came back around, and this time, he was nowhere to be found, and his car was buried in the snow. I could see his wheels peeking out of the snow in the same spot where I had seen his car previously in the ditch. So now I'm certain that I had a death wish. Basically, they want you to think that you're about to fucking die at every moment. So now in total crisis mode, I begin my journey back home to Detroit. I was thinking I had many safe havens and allies I could rely on who would help me, namely my ex-girlfriend and my parents. Boy, was I mistaken. As soon as I get to Detroit, I call my friend Jane and tell her everything that happened. She brushes most of it off, but I'm too exhausted to explain anything, and I pass out for 17 hours. When I wake up, the first thing I do is call my ex-girlfriend. She tells me that I can stay with her. I take her out that night for dinner for sushi. The whole place is full of weird-looking dudes. They looked like occultish, like satanic, like draped in robes, like it was like a bizarre setting. You know what I mean? And they were all wearing these weird Masonic rings. Oh, I think they're Masonic. And they were making a point to show me that they were wearing them. It was really bizarre. This is when we go back to the apartment and sleep, and the next day everything is fine. This is when I noticed tons of red and white newer vehicles with dark tints parked in our apartment's parking lot. They followed me around town everywhere I went. Grocery store, laundromat, tons of these vehicles. Now my girlfriend starts to notice this. This is upsetting for her to realize because she is very much unaware of these realizations and this program and how real the world is and the powers that be. She typically turns a blind eye to that stuff. God bless her. So I sit bored in the apartment for a day trying to understand what the fuck actually happened the 24 hours prior. I decided to call my old coworker Matt, who also works at the same restaurant that my girlfriend worked at. Matt is a young kid. He's 18 and his mom is a probation officer. Also a born-again Christian. I started telling him about all these events, and I tell him that we need to meet up ASAP. We meet, I spill the beans. I tell him all about the gang stalking, being chased, being followed, harassed for the first time. He seems shocked, the only person that I talked to about it. He seems shocked and mostly empathetic, something I did not get from anybody else that I tried to tell about this. Because of this, I basically fully trusted him. They're hitting me right now, so I'm going to move. But what did I have to lose? He picks my brain apart for the next 3 hours and we talk about all of this. Now at this point, he becomes a target, I think. After he drives home, he informs me that red and white vehicles are following him. They even parked in front of his home as he went inside. I honestly felt bad for him at this point, but also relieved because I had somebody that was also going through this and showing me empathy. We spent the following afternoon shooting video of strange patterns of red and white cars that followed us everywhere we went. My ex-girlfriend seemed happy. Things were looking up. I had someone to trust. For once in 6 months, finally relief. Finally I had some camaraderie. Misery loves company type shit. Now my ex-girlfriend was moving into a new place the next week. I thought everything was cool. She agreed to let me stay there for 2 weeks until I got on my feet. We weren't going to date. She was just like, basically like, yeah, you can stay with me. I know this is really weird. I'll let you get on your feet. Boom. So I had my friend Matt, the targeted guy, also help me move all of her stuff. I fixed my bumper up and he helped me put it on and install new lights. Here's where it gets really crazy. We finish the repairs on my vehicle and head to my ex-girlfriend's house. We walk in and everything is cool. We start visiting and then me and Matt decide to go to Walmart. The plan is to buy spy cameras and a dash camera. We find both. I notice, however, that Matt is doing the same hand signals to the other patrons in Walmart that all my perpetrators use. He wasn't doing this before. I couldn't believe my eyes. I told him to stop scratching his head in the same spot every time we passed somebody in the store. He said okay, but continued to signal to people. I told him to stop again, and I was going to slap the fucking shit out of him if he did it again. At this point, he became really nervous. He was really smug and kept hand signaling to everybody we passed on the way back to Suki's, who is my ex. I pull Suki aside and tell her that I believe Matt is involved. She tells me to relax, sit down, and that I'm just being paranoid. I foolishly tell myself that the truth is just that. Now my ex-GF's friend comes over. One is my old manager from the restaurant I used to work at. We smoke some pot, and I melt into the couch. I pull my hoodie tight around my face and I laugh. My old manager looks at me and says, "Does that make you feel safe when you do that?" It was fucking chilling, okay? I didn't think anything of it. I just laughed it off and said yes. After an awkward silence, she asks if I want to go outside for a smoke. I agree. She brings her friend, the guy, outside with us. I immediately then start talking to him and her, and they start using directed conversation, throwing the words target and stalk, just super out of place. I just ignore it. We go inside, and now I'm totally betrayed. I'm now left with all my eggs, all my trust in one basket, my ex-girlfriend. Everyone leaves and we go into her room. She immediately starts picking a fight with me out of nowhere. I'm talking out of nowhere. These were just, it was like her job that day was to make sure that we got into a fight and we didn't get along. It was bizarre. We've had a lot of arguments, real arguments before that. This is when she breaks up with me, or tells me to fuck off, basically. I was thinking she's going to get back with me, but what was I wrong? She basically tells me to fuck off. So obviously, I'm upset and I call a friend to hang out. She agrees and I storm out. So now I'm really assed out, and all I have is my friend Hugh, who's here in Michigan still, or was. He also was a perpetrator. He was signaling to people. That's all I wrote. He was signaling to people, so I burned that bridge because it drives me nuts. When I'm hanging out with you and I know that you're a perp and you're signaling to people, it drives me fucking nuts. So me and him drove around town, and I kept telling him about this stuff, and he's smugly like, oh, you're just paranoid, this and that. I'm pointing stuff out on the road. He's signaling to people as he smugly smiles, doing all this shit. It was devastating. And since then, I've basically moved place to place, trying to pick up the fucking pieces of my life. And why do I think I was a target? Well, if you notice that the beginning of this video, I was in Colorado. Well, 2 years ago, I dated this girl. She lived in Castle Rock, Colorado, in a big old mansion, something I'm not used to. It was super cool. She was cool. I was using drugs at the time. She asked me if I wanted some Xanax. I took a handful of Xanax, and that night I blacked the fuck out. I stole her laptop, and I stole her Suboxone. I don't know if any of you have done drugs. Suboxone is like a medication for heroin addicts to taper off using them, or using dope rather. It's like methadone kind of. So I stole her box of Suboxone, and I stole her laptop, and I woke up in a hotel room in Iowa with no recollection of what the fuck just happened. Well, a year and a half later, boom, all this shit starts coming to light, and I'm being followed and all this bullshit. So I think it's because of me doing that to her. Her dad is the vice president of State Farm Insurance. Her name is, what's her last name? Kelsey Brooks. Her name is Kelsey Brooks. Her dad is the vice president of State Farm Insurance, and that is who I believe is responsible for my targeting. I was also a vegan activist the past year ago. and I still am. I posted some videos of some weird orb-looking UFOs on YouTube. I also think that might be a factor. But mainly, I think it is because I stole a laptop and prescription medication from this woman, Kelsey Brooks, whose father is obviously a powerful man. Hopefully that gave you some insight. I'm not trying to be scattered, but it's hard when you're trying to work through your story and there's just been so much fucking fuckery that's gone on, and they thought jam you and speech jam you, and it's difficult. God bless.